How do you all feel now? How often do you stop just to feel your life? It's not going to be there for a long time more, whether it's 5 years or 25. Death is coming. Have you ever? My mouth doesn't work this time in the morning. But have you ever imagined yourself be dying or dead? It was the tipping point for many who later became great teachers. But how they did it seemed to require no understanding of logic or reality. To imagine yourself as dead and thinking what they're going to do with the body, et cetera, et cetera. And then realizing one is still alive while you're doing this. Some teachers view this as being self realization or enlightenment, imagining themselves to be dead, and then to miraculously find out they're still alive. And therefore imagining that death is illusory because they're still present when they're dead mentally. To me, that's wacko. How the great ones, or some of the great ones, can rest on the understanding that if you can imagine yourself to be dead, you really are. And yet you're witnessing the whole process means that you're above life and death. To me, that's utterly wacko. Why would anybody listen to this person after they say that's the basis of their enlightenment is a imagine themselves dead, and in that imagination they're dead. But when they check their own body functions, they find out they're still alive. Wow. Oh, wow. Ooh. And they take that as having been transcending death because they can imagine themselves being in a scenario when they're dead, but find out during that scenario that it was just imagination. but they don't call it imagination. They call it enlightenment. And from then on, they become gurus. I guess it's gurus of self-delusion. Who was it that did this? Was it Ramana that had that kind of experience? Was it somebody else in the Zen tradition?
It was Ramana.
It was Ramana. Thank you. How can one worship a man who thinks himself to be dead, but at some point along the way realizes he's still alive? So he's transcended death. Fucking A, that's the case. We're all gurus. If it takes a trivial thing like that, God save us. And imagine the mentality of the people who would follow him. And his famous story about how he imagined himself dead, but he was still alive. Therefore, he was above death, or somehow immortal. And yet, he anticipated dying in the future. Can anybody explain that to me? It just seems so wacko.
You
I
have
imagine,
you have
huh?
the Schrodinger paradox with the cat in the box, irradiated. Is it dead or alive? I mean, it's the only possible context that was documented that approaches this, but not on the same level as what Ramana did. I didn't mean to interrupt, but
What do you think about what Ramana did?
that he went on to become one of the greatest sages of the 20th century, and maybe he had uh, like a moment, just split mind, walking him around the block for a minute, until he came to his senses. Holiest man on the planet, near the navel of the planet Arunachala. What can go wrong?
Hmm. Do you see the idiocy of this holy man kind of point of view? He doesn't differentiate between happenings in dreams or imagination and what is really the case. Remembering this, the delusion of Ramana, we should question anyone who claims to be a guru. What are their teachings about life and death? What about death? What do you teach about death? Maybe this idea is going to kill me. I guess other guys make up stories, total fictionary accounts of their life. Some say that about Robert. Some of the students gleefully checked every minute of Robert's life that they could find out about. His claim to have been at Arunachala, and everybody there claims Robert was never there in Arunachala. Well, none of you knew Robert. I don't know directly. Did you? But Robert was the real thing. Robert was always staring off into space. It was empty. And he came to satsang as the good for nothing man. And he talked about a conversation he had with his brother several years ago, who called him out of nowhere, bragging about his own life and accomplishments. Accomplishments mean nothing. Knowing you're alive, that you exist, is everything. There's no need to add on stories of little old dream ancients that appeared to you as a child over and over again. That story is worthless except to that one person. And yet it allows them to become a guru. You just put on guru clothes, adopt a Sanskrit name, put a brother or father before that. You become father, brother, Gurunanda. But if a guru isn't much of a showman, Mhm. What does he do? I know what Robert did. As soon as he got one or two or three or five students, he started satsang at the house of one of them. He didn't hold it at his own house. His wife wouldn't tolerate it. A good practice to try, though, is the one where you imagine yourself to be dead. Carry it all the way through. It doesn't matter what the cause of your death is, but you should imagine yourself dying and then practice dying. And from that point, totally be aware of everything that happens in your imagination and what you're feeling in your present body, mind. There's a hell of a lot of difference between being dead, dreaming that you're dead, or thinking that you're dead. Thinking that you're dead is not a real state for some of these gurus. But no matter how you fake it, thinking about being dead and having experiences of being dead, which are false because you're still alive, is not a good way to increase your understanding of life and death. People came to him because he was a name and a story that everybody knew. But mostly his name was on the lips of many people that other people hear about and rush to fall to the feet of this guru. Me too. I did it too. Seeking the highest secret knowledge from the great gurus, or so I thought. But gurus aren't necessarily that honest or articulate enough to tell a good story. Robert himself referred to himself laughingly as the guru who mumbled. He said, there are many gurus. That had major experiences, life and death. But only one of them mumbled, which was him, because of his stroke and his Parkinson's. It was a joke. They all laughed. But where is all this wisdom coming from? Maybe it's a sewer in Calcutta. Examine the credentials. What was their experiences? What was their training? Who did they train with? How did they train? Did they meditate? Did they do penance? Did they count sheep? What was their practice? What state did it result in? Who were they when you saw them outside of satsang? I loved Robert. He had sort of really quirky and half insane sense of humor. I would tell him about some of the beliefs of the students of his. And he loved to hear about it, how their imaginations worked. But what about you? Would you know truth if it came up? And touched your head from behind? Would you know what was really real as opposed to what appeared to be? For some of the teachers, the world of appearance just wasn't real. For other teachers, heightened states of consciousness were real. And all the teachings of mankind were illusory. There's no ending of the variations on stupidity and being alive and conscious. There's nothing to prove anything except your own sense of being alive and being aware in the present moment. Any story a person has about his past, surviving an imaginary death, or becoming known as being a student of the great Mombasa, or who is this? Why do you come? What are you searching for? How many wonder if I'm really enlightened? It's not enlightened. I saw him fart yesterday. And enlightened beings don't fart. You didn't know that, did you? Ask yourself, what is this life all about? Why am I here? What am I myself searching for? Engaging on all these mystical teachings, coming to Robert, coming to Ramana. Why did we do it? Why do we do it? I guess my motivation was after 30 or 40 years of being engaged in a search for my own truth, having studied under many teachers, I guess I've come to the conclusion that all of life is deluding. We're living in our own imaginations. We don't know it. But it is as if the world was not real. And only when we examine it with our intellect and our feelings can we verify whether it's real or not. There's no measure of truth other than your own understanding. Wherever you are on the spiritual scale or the human scale, something bothers you. Maybe when you're a young kid, it starts. Sometimes it's a happening when you're 20s, death of somebody you know. and it begins the spiritual search. And we keep looking for truth, looking for truth, looking for the highest teachings. And at first we go to all the usual locations, study Western philosophy, study Eastern philosophy. Few of us may even investigate our own selves, our own existence, how we feel it, how we experience it, not in our minds technically, like a psychologist might do it, but put yourself in the seat of somebody that's in a difficult situation or environment, and they need to escape somehow. But you can start something like this. I am alive, whatever that means. Then you be quiet and look within. Find the emptiness within. And within that emptiness, there's always a steady beating, a vibration of the life force within. Sometimes it sounds like the heartbeat. But how do we feel it throughout our bodies? We can imagine ourselves right now being in our bodies in a remote satsang. No other place in the world exists right now except us in satsang. And what is this life like? Can we feel that life force throughout the body, your body? Now, there are many, many, many kinds of energies that can be felt when you begin meditating in silence on yourself. But the only true thing you can say is that I am alive and I am aware in that aliveness. But I did not come from that place. I came from a place of unknowing, which we're born with. And it takes 10 or 20 years to get that to a place where you become a seeker. Something in your own world is not right. It may be the sense that life is too short, too painful, too whatever. to be either understood or loved. But you have to understand that both of these things, understanding and love, are illusory. They're part of the play. You should ask yourself, where did this play come from? How was it forced on me? How did I resist now? What stories do I believe now? Who do I uplift and make into saints or yanis? And why? When you go to meet a saint, do check his credentials. Is there a story of his awakening somewhere? A story about his teachings? And yet, almost everywhere, gurus pop up. And they take different forms according to place and time. If they were a teacher 100 years ago from the South, the teachings would have to fit somehow to Buddhist teachings about the nature of the world, the nature of ourselves. But in America, in the West as a whole, we put that discovery off because we fill it with 3,000 years of teachings about it. And you cannot follow a teacher for 25 years who has nothing to say about it, as you're looking for something that you can't yourself articulate. So you go and study and study and study and seek and seek and seek until you're blue in the face. Isn't that idiom hilarious, being blue in the face? Can you imagine yourself as being blue in your face? Or somebody else is being blue in the face? Human understanding is really very limited. But seekers can become aware of the vast emptiness of everything, and also the vast mountain of teachings about everything. What's this person to do except to chuck it all off? Because listening to teachings doesn't mean anything. It has to be the correct teachings. In the sense, anything said in words is incorrect, imaginary. But ultimate truths have to be found. Not Ramana, not Nisargadatta, not in Jesus, but your own awakening comes from within you. You are the center of your own world. If it's a crappy world, it's because you think it's crappy. If you think it's a heartless world or a wonderful world, then it is for you. But that's only your point of view. It has no special truth value except to you. So when you go to a guru, is he passing on something to you about awakening, about life, about afterlife, about God? That you either make your own story or you work for years to integrate your own story into a Ramana story. Many years I wandered and I just felt I don't know. And over the years, that led me to search more and more until I met Robert and I surrendered all that seeking to him. My seeking finally had a place to be heard and seen and felt by investing in Robert. I gave him the center of my attention for all time. I surrendered. I surrendered the search. To attempt to become a clone, at least a clone in terms of realization. And what do I mean by realization? Basically, I mean what lies within you is your own truth. And do you have any truth? My conclusion was I had no truth. I don't understand what truth is. I don't believe anything now. I just see people walking around themselves, similarly speaking their own truths. But if you look at them, they're all finite truths, not transcendent. They're truths about a person and their place in time. We do this even with great gurus. We want to hear about their lives and how they became enlightened. Got a cold. And the search goes on. And some of them become so-called world teachers because they've been all over the world. They've taught all over the world. They have students from all over the world. But the teachers themselves have developed their own meaning as they're teaching. They've swallowed all of the teachings of all the gurus they've been to, and they create a new one within themselves. And then these new teachings and teachers can rise to the position where they themselves are world teachers. But what is that knowledge? If you got it from somebody else, how did you get it? Does the knowledge help you at all? What does it do for you? People gravitate to teachers and teachings because it gives them a sense of being home again, being spoon fed again. And it all depends on trusting the source. A lot of people thought that trusting Robert is very questionable. And from these stories he told about other teachers, it's quite easy to imagine that they were just deeply deluded folk who pass on their delusions as true and are surrounded by people who embrace those teachings, however wacky they are. Just the teachings that the world is not real. It's not a promising place to start any kind of spirituality. The world is delusional or illusional. What does that mean? It's not a statement of fact in any way. And what teachers do is they skip forward and they often offer their own delusional world as truth. This is the story of guru and teacher relationships. The story of how a student can stay with a teacher for 40 some years. And see the teacher himself as so ordinary that he couldn't possibly have any truth. That's the fact of all Yanis or Yanni wannabes is the search for truth, the search for the true teachings, the search for the teachings that are going to make us whole and happy. But there is no truth. People are telling you a story, whether it's Jesus telling his stories, Ramana telling his, Robert telling his, me telling you. It's a story only. And in reality, there is no truth. There are stories. And the closest you can come to truth is really the realization that these teachers are talking from a place of their own understanding. It has nothing to do with enlightenment or God realization. Finally, they burn out. They see knowledge is always illusion. We're born into a world filled with symbols. And there's only various numbers of progression paths in the world of men. And the best we can do is come up with a human truth. or the assertions that no truths exist, that they're only stories. And knowing that, you don't have to do them anymore. You can rest in silence, rest in truth. You don't have to deal with that bullshit anymore. No more seeking, no more finding truth. It's an endless task. And all that you find out during this chasing these truths is they are stories. So ultimately, you are left with nothing. You realize that any knowledge is just a story. And there's no proof of the reality of one story over another, except maybe the usefulness in everyday life. But everybody doesn't. Everybody has their own guru to a certain extent, whether they study with them or just know about them, or having someone in the past as your guru. Everybody's got them. Go listen to the one that has the story most similar to your own. You'll stay with him or her forever. Because they support your delusional beliefs, which is also their illusionary beliefs. So, you have to give yourself a little smile. You say to yourself, no more beliefs. I'm not going to believe in any of these stories because I don't know which of the endless number of stories out there is real or not real. So I'm going to stop seeking and depend only on myself. Now, what I do then is I realize all of these religions and philosophies are just stories. And people are spending lives living out a story. But freedom comes from not having any story anymore. And just living without stories. That's so very hard to do. To be happy, you have to go out every day and kick some guru in their ass. Because it becomes your job for a while to become a guru doubter. I'm finding them all frauds. Or you can relax and say, fuck, I'm now free not to think about this shit. When I'm hungry, I'll go eat. That kind of thing. Life becomes very simple because you no longer have a dozen teachers in your head telling you what to do. I really do very little. A satsang twice a week. That's all I do now. The rest of the time, I'm just being myself, feeling my body, my weight, the pressures of the couch, how awake or asleep I still feel. And I just become a witness to everything. No longer carrying the cross of looking for Jesus or Ramana or truth. All those things are jokes. Metaphysical truth are jokes. Just rest in yourself, in your own beingness, doing nothing. And you'll get happier and happier over time. That was Robert's teaching, his main teaching. This practice. Practice the act of surrendering, of giving everything up and becoming nothing in the presence of your family, friends. And people gravitate towards you because it appears to them that you've transcended life. And you haven't. You've just transcended any possible teachings about the life that you're living. Have no understanding of what's going on. And you live. And when your mind isn't bothered by all of the metaphysical stuff, the teachings, etc., even of your own life, when you don't bother with it anymore, you can live a truly peaceful life and realize that all knowledge is delusional, just stories. And as long as you live in the stories, you're never really free. You have to escape all of the stories, settle down, and appear to grab onto one of those stories as your identity. and you live your life. No more conflict. Only silence and peace and happiness. You've given everything up only to discover what and who you are. Then you don't need the stories after that at all. You are very satisfied with being and doing nothing. To you now, the ones that are most delusional generally are religious fanatics or philosophical fanatics who are obsessed with their own understanding of everything and offer it to people willingly. But the real teacher is not found at a university because they are totally sold on the delusion of truths, true and false. And the only teachers you can really follow to get anything out of are those who put you on your own. They may tell stories. And you come for years to hear their new story of the day and the week. And you get to be known as a follower of that one or that one. Or you give up everything, every mental belief. You surrender. And you're at rest. Seeking was painful. You didn't realize how painful it was. Not until you were at a retrospective point of view. When you were immersed in it, you couldn't see it. So this should be your point of view. Either shut down your mind and live on that person's level during the moments when you speak to him or her, or go away. So when all philosophy, all truths, all religions go away, it should not touch you at all because you're already there yourself. I love you all. I want you to know, each and every one of you, is or can be a source of light for others. Once all the doubt in yourself is washed away, you'll have some truths buried in you that you have to dig up. But ultimately, you're free now. You're free of language, free of mentation, free of intelligence, free of all these shoulds. You become like nothing. Does anybody have any questions?
I just want to thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We deserve each other. Feel yourself. Just close your eyes and feel yourself. Feel your head, your neck, your back. Find any place where there's some pain. And when there's pain there, go into it and feel what it's like. But continue to examine your own experiences of yourself and of what's around you. You become the final truth. And there's nobody else. There's you alone. And you have to tell that to everybody you meet. There's only you alone. Come to grips with that. Not try to make up a story of transcendence that fits the story of Ramana or of Robert or of Buddha. But have confidence in your own vision and understanding. And that only happens when you feel you've reached the root of life and death and of mentation. And now you can drop it all. The totality of the search and just be. And for the actor and for the dreamer and for the philosopher, that's very hard to do. Their whole life is based on searching deeper and deeper and further and further. But when they realize who and what they themselves are, is ineffable, not understandable, not relatable. But somehow we live together without these truths being settled. And we can live joyfully because we're no longer thinking about all this shit and getting upset about it. We have become like children and just play by ourselves. I feel like I have nothing to do anymore. I just like telling people about it, that you're free. You're free. Now you can find out for yourself by searching for 30 or 40 years, going to Arunachala, going to a guru, climbing the Himalayas to find a naked fakir in some cave. That'll give you all the truths. And all that the gurus can say is, what the fuck? I don't know. But I'll tell you the story I learned from my teacher. And after you've had a big enough following, like 30 or 40 people, you all share the same delusion, and it's okay. It doesn't interfere with everyday life. You can go pray together and meditate together, and it doesn't matter. What you are ultimately is not a matter of thought, but of beingness, being aware of your own aliveness and your own sense of beingness. And that's all that there is. Well, I love you all. I really do. Because it's an easy thing to do. You're all very small. You can't slap me in the face. And if you scare me by threats, I'll just turn this computer off and you'll disappear. Then again, every once in a while, somebody turns up on my doorstep. That's made the effort to find out where I live and chases me down. Michael did that. a long time ago, chased me down. Anyway, I love you all. Take care. Bye-bye.